Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to show you how to draw Boba Fett. Those of you who've been following my channel for a while might not be aware that I have a background as a freelance illustrator and I love to draw. And Boba Fett is my favorite character from Star Wars. So I figured it'd be kind of a fun opportunity to do a little drawing video and show you some of the techniques that I use whenever I'm doing drawings. And I'm not using materials that are particularly sophisticated. Some of these are just sort of cheap marker and pen sets. I will be using some Prismacolor pencils, though. These are a little bit more expensive, and you might have to pay a little bit more. But most of the stuff is fairly cheap. You can see this was only $2.50 for this set of pens. This set of markers was only $2. I don't remember how much this set of pencils is, but it was kind of cool because they're double-ended. So you can see there's like a lot of colors in this particular set. So you can find these at various places, sometimes like places like, Dollar General or someplace like that might have some decent art supplies that you can actually use. And also, I have here the paper that I'm using. This is basically just a 50-pound regular sketch paper, and I've taped it to sort of a regular cutting board that you would use in your kitchen as a nice firm backing, so I can have something to press up against. And in terms of reference material, I'm using my Black Series Boba Fett action figure, which is very detailed. And this is important in any drawing project that you're going to do. You need to have very, very good reference material. You need to be looking at something. Even if you're going to abstract it in some way or make it cartoony, it's very important that you have reference material to work from when you're doing a drawing. So I can't emphasize that enough. So this is going to be my reference material. And as you can see on my iPad over here, I've taken some photos of it and from different angles to sort of experiment with the shadows and stuff, because shadow reference is going to be very important in the final piece. So yeah, several photos, and I think I'm going to choose this one as the basis for my overall composition. So that's sort of how I'm going to arrange Boba Fett on the page. So anyway, I'll talk more about it as I'm drawing. So let's get started. So I begin this drawing by drawing a rectangle, which represents the border or edges of my composition. And you'll notice this is being played back at 8 times the normal speed. The original drawing took just under 2 hours. So I'm playing it back faster than that, obviously, so this video won't end up being 2 hours long, and that would be pretty boring. And you'll get the general idea of what's going on, even playing back at this particular speed. So what you see me doing now is called gesture drawing, where I'm basically defining the overall shape of the figure using, sort of broad strokes and, doing the overall geometry. And then you'll see me starting to fill in some of the details as well. So I hold up the action figure a little bit closer every once in a while so I can look at it up close for some of the details. And you can see I'm starting to sort of fill in. Once you've defined the overall shape of the figure, it makes it easier to sort of like start filling in the details gradually as you go. So, I'm adding in the various armor pieces and sort of defining the shapes within the overall structure of the figure. So I find this process actually works quite well in terms of maintaining the proportions of the figure for the entire drawing. So once you have that overall shape, it makes it much easier to sort of define the individual shapes within those larger gestures, And as I'm working in sort of this light green pencil and not working very dark because I don't want to have to erase anything. So you won't see me use an eraser at all during this drawing. So and now I'm starting to add in some of the color. Basically, some of these armor pieces, have sort of an orange or a red look. So I'm sort of doing that. And then in terms of the jumpsuit, I'm using sort of a blue color because it has a bit of a blue tinge. Now I'm starting on the background, and at this point in the drawing, it's going to look a little awkward because I did sort of, again, the sort of the broad strokes of filling in part of the color of the background. So it looks kind of messy right now, but rest assured, by the end of the drawing, all of that background will be filled in, and it's going to make a lot more sense as the drawing progresses. But yeah, it looks a little crazy right now. So, but just bear with me. It's all going to make sense in the end. So continuing on with the figure, Boba Fett has a lot of armor pieces and sort of pouches on his bounty hunter outfit. So it's important to get in all the details. The original design for Boba Fett was created by various artists at Industrial Light and Magic, and those included people like Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston. And this outfit was originally intended for a squad of super commandos from Mandalore who were armed with weapons built into their suits. These weapons included list razors and rocket darts, and also a flying jetpack. And all these items were retained and eventually used in the final design for Boba Fett. And I remember seeing the conceptual drawings for all this stuff growing up. And it was definitely an inspiration for me to pursue becoming an illustrator myself. Seeing all those fantastic conceptual drawings by people like Ralph McQuarrie and Joe Johnston. I remember having that Joe Johnston sketchbook that they had published growing up. And I've reviewed that on the channel, by the way, in case you want to see that sketchbook. So the approach I'm taking with this drawing is mixed media, pens, pencils, and markers. And I'm not really a purist when it comes to using media for drawings and paintings. I feel like whatever works best to achieve the results you want, the end sort of justifies the means. So when I was in college, I was basically trained in how to use lots of different media. I sort of gravitate towards pastels, chalk pastels for the most part, but I do enjoy this particular medium too. I find that it's actually very easy to sort of do a drawing using this sort of mixed technique, pens, markers, and pencils. It's a little bit more tedious in terms of like the background. As you can see, I'm starting to fill in sort of gradually, and here I'm defining the shadows as well. One thing that should be noted when you're doing drawings of figures or things standing on the ground, having those shadows in there really helps to establish whatever it is you're drawing in the space. It keeps it grounded because I've noticed a lot of times people forget about doing the shadows, and it makes it look as if whatever they're drawing is sort of floating in midair, and it just looks awkward. So I'd highly recommend using shadows and lighting as a way to sort of give your drawings a kind of realism. And as you can see, I'm filling more and more of the background, and then I'm starting in on this weapon as well. This part's pretty tricky because the perspective of it, the way he's holding it in his hand, and the way the fingers are wrapping around it, makes it one of the more complicated challenges of this drawing. Sort of try and get those shapes all together because things are sort of all overlapping and so forth. And drawing hands in general is probably one of the most challenging things as well. It took me a long time actually as a drawer to kind of learn how to draw hands and make them convincing. So yeah, that part gets kind of tricky. And again, this weapon here and how he's holding it, probably one of the most challenging things about this drawing. As you can see, I'm using sort of this blue pen right now to sort of define some of the details in terms of his jumpsuit and so forth. There's a lot of pockets and pouches and stuff on this jumpsuit, and drawing fabric in general is very tricky because it takes a while to sort of learn how to do folds and stuff in fabric. It's sort of it's funny because you can be drawing for your entire lifetime and still be learning stuff as you go. Again, direct observation I find is best if you have someone sort of pose for you, with sort of clothing that has a lot of folds and stuff in it. It's very good practice in terms of taking a look at how the light interacts with those folds and creates these unusual shapes. It's way more geometric than you would think because you think of clothing as being very soft and very kind of like not having hard to find shapes. But it's actually, in a lot of ways, the opposite of that because the folds and stuff actually sometimes form very sharp edges. So if you keep that in mind when you're drawing fabric, that should be able to help you in terms of, defining things better. And continuing on with the background, gradually sort of like adding in more and more layers. I'm switching back and forth between, markers and pens and the pencils, sort of using whatever works in terms of, defining that background. And then here you can see I'm finally using a black pen to sort of like go in and sort of darken some of the details on sort of his weapon, and also bits of his jumpsuit and so forth, sort of to kind of tone down the blueness of it, and also add a little bit of shadow as well and detail. So I didn't really start with the black pen or black pencils in the beginning, just because that can get in the way. And I'm doing the chest insignia as well, and on his shoulder there's also his little logo as well. So I did that in red, and then switching back to the red pen to sort of like continue on with the background, yeah, and the shadows and so forth. So it's sort of a gradual process, sort of building it up over time. And it seems like it takes a long time, but again, I did this entire drawing in less than 2 hours. So it really once you get practiced at it, you can kind of produce stuff very quickly. And again, this process with the pens and markers and stuff is pretty forgiving, as long as you work gradually. Like if you lay down a lot of dark colors initially, you may run into trouble because you won't be able to cover that up. So this is why I'm sort of working very gradually on this drawing, and sort of like, taking it step by step, and not going overboard in terms of too much. With the background and stuff, I was able to lay down color a lot more loosely, and mainly because I am working in layers, and you can work very, very intense initially, and then go back in with other pencils and stuff, and sort of tone it down. Um, the use of complementary colors, you'll notice in terms of de-intensifying an intense color. So if you put down a red color and you want to, tone it back or whatever, all you have to do is like pull a little bit of a green pencil over top of it, and that actually will tone it down. Now here you can see I'm sort of intensifying the color a little bit more with the markers, and then going back in with the black pen, and sort of adding a little bit more shadow and so forth. So yeah, it's sort of like gradual process to sort of create this. And here I'm working on that cape that he has over his shoulder. And in hindsight, I probably should have moved that a little bit more to the right hand side, because it seems to be sort of like leaning over a little bit too far. But overall, I chose this composition for a reason, basically because I thought the shadows and everything looked well, and I like the pose that he's standing in with his weapon and everything. So overall, pretty satisfied with starting with this composition. I think in the future I may do some other drawings of Boba Fett, maybe sort of tightening in on just sort of his upper half, and maybe doing some drawings that have a lot more detail. Might do something using pastel as well, because I really enjoy working with chalk pastel. I find that you can get a certain sense of realism that and depth that sort of extends beyond what you're seeing here. Here it's sort of tends to be a little bit more cartoony or comic bookish, but I still like it, and I think this process is something that you may want to try with your own drawings, in terms of a choice of medium that might actually be able to produce results for you. And as I mentioned, the materials I'm using are not expensive. I was able to pick up everything I'm using here for fairly cheap, except for the Prismacolor pencils. Those two do tend to be a little pricey, and you'll probably have to go to an art supply store to get those, rather than, sort of a regular department store or whatever. So yeah, that would be the only kind of expensive thing that I used in this drawing. And as you can see, I'm sort of starting to wrap things up in terms of this thing starting to look more and more finished, adding in more of the background, and also sort of tightening up the details. You can see I'm darkening in some of the armor pieces and everything, sort of like adding in more shadows and sort of like defining things a little bit more in terms of the figure. So yeah, things are starting to kind of come together here, and you can see I'm using sort of some darker pens and pencils as I'm working to sort of like uh, bring in sort of like the more dramatic lighting and so forth on this piece. So that gun had a tendency to be a little bit of an issue in this drawing. So, and I'll talk about that once I'm finished, in terms of some of the challenges I had in terms of executing this drawing overall. So yeah, I think it's looking pretty good though, and so we're sort of wrapping it up here. Okay, so this is pretty much where I'm stopping on this drawing. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this. I did a little bit of tweaking off camera, just around this area of the gun. Basically, some of the perspective seemed to be a little off, and something about the way the stock was bending underneath his arm looked a little strange. So I just did a little bit of tweaking here and there off camera, but overall, pretty much what you saw in the video is my entire process. Basically, layer upon layer upon layer of both the marker, the pen, the pencil, and stuff gives you this sort of textured look. And it looks a little, comic bookish, but actually, I like all the texture and everything in this. I think it's looking pretty interesting. I could do more with it, and I may. Down the road, I may go back into this and sort of refine some of the details a little bit. It does look a little bit too clean on his helmet and stuff. What you'll notice, the way Boba Fett looks in The Empire Strikes Back, he has like a lot of dents and scratches and stuff on his armor. So I may want to go back in and sort of add some of those details and stuff. So at this scale, you're not going to really get too much in terms of added detail, just because I'm working relatively small. So I may save that for doing a larger drawing to kind of like get into sort of the dents and scratches and stuff on his armor. But overall, I think it's looking not too bad. Let me know in the comments what you think of this, and if you enjoyed it, think about subscribing to the channel, because I plan on doing some more drawing videos in the future, and I may be doing some other different kinds of techniques as well, maybe some pastel, maybe some watercolor, various other techniques, because I do know how to use multiple kinds of media in addition to what I showed you today. So, and there's lots of characters out there to draw. So, lots of opportunities to do, sort of these action figure renderings. I hope this video was helpful to you in terms of learning different processes for drawing. And if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And until next time, I hope you're having a great day, and may the force be with you. Thanks for watching.